Hi, how you doing? This is Steve Downs, the voice of Master Chief, Spartan 117. Want to send out a special holiday message to all the Podcast Evolve team, all the patrons, all the listeners. Really support all the great work and all the cool stuff you've done with Halo. Keep up the good work, and Merry Christmas. Master Chief, out.
Welcome, Spartans, to another Halo Book Club episode, part of Podcast Evolved, your home for Halo. I am your host, Aaron, and with me today we've got Krista.
Hello.
We've got Oren.
Hey, everyone.
And we've got David.
Hey, everybody.
And today we are bringing you one of our Christmas book clubs, which can mean only one thing: short stories. But specifically, we're bringing you the shortest of stories, the Halo poems.
Very short.
Yes, indeed.
Not much story.
Which is a weird thing to say, Halo poems.
Poems are an art form too.
Some people got artistic. One person wrote a cry for help. We're going to talk about that later. We have 5 stories to cover, or 5 poems to cover in total. But before we dive into those, I'll just run through the socials. If you have a moment, go and check out our lovely website, halopodcastevolve.com or halopodcast.com. You go there, you can find links to all of our shows. We've got the main Podcast Evolve, we have Mission Debrief, and we have Builds with Blocks. If you would like to support our show, you can do that by going to patreon.com/halopodcastevolved. We offer a variety of exclusive rewards to our patrons, such as early episodes and swag. And I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our lovely patrons, because you keep the lights on and your little smiles make it all worthwhile.
Aww.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all very much.
Much appreciated. And if you would like a different way to support the show that isn't through Patreon, you can support us through Audible. Go to audibletrial.com/podcast evolved and you can start a free trial and it will support us. They have all of the Halo novels on Audible. You can go and listen to them and then you can work your way through all of these poems. Highly recommended because one of them is read by Frank himself. They also have lots of other good novels. They have guided wellness programs and podcasts, which I have to admit, having been an Audible subscriber for years, I haven't dived into, so I really should. So if you do that, we appreciate it very much, and go enjoy some very good audiobooks. Right, we're going to dive into our poems. These all come from Halo Evolutions?
4 of them. One of them comes from Fractures. I felt like it would be better to lump it into this episode instead of doing a singular episode on the Ballad. Which I will say, we probably have the most to say about the Ballad, so we probably could have got away with like a 20-minute episode.
Yeah, we could have. Like we said, Halo Evolutions, it comes in multiple forms as the original 2009 version, and then they split it into volumes 1 and 2, and then there's a republish in 2019. And then we have Fractures as well, which came out in 2016. So those are your 2 books. They're available in physical, digital, and audiobook formats. You can go and listen to all of those. So we've got our first one up is called Beyond, and it is written by Jonathan Goff, and the cover art is by Sparth, and I believe this is mine. There is majesty here, beyond reason, beyond understanding, vast in its implications. What wonders offered around each new corner, over every skyward peak, or hidden deep within the shadows of each sunken valley? The questions raised, in astonishment, in fear. If such glories can be divine yet forgotten, lost to time, strewn about the eternity of the stars, what then are we? Be us man or be us monster? In light of knowledge so vast, so far beyond, superior even to our dreams, what matter then our petty confrontations, when weighed against the sins we sow? What matter then our fate amongst the cosmos eternal, in light of the halo, its luminous glow? We have this poem. It's one person's thoughts. I was originally going to say it feels like the thoughts of a prophet until he refers to himself as be us man. And then I go, I don't think the prophets think they're men. But up until that point, it sounds very... It's the sort of thing you'd picture Regret pondering to himself.
Maybe it's just a guy with a god complex, you know?
Well, my other thought is it's some very just artistic Oni agent on a prowler somewhere.
Just with nothing better to do.
He just has all this secret knowledge, but he doesn't know what to make of it.
Maybe it's someone on the prowler that eventually goes to the Mona Lisa. There's how you do a little bit of canon in that.
I don't know, it feels very kind of prophetish.
Yeah, that's it. It has a very Covenant prophet-y feel to it, while they sort of like just ponder. You can tell it's done a lot to upset the writer's view of their place in the universe. They're now questioning everything because this great wonder has been found. It's the kind of vibe I get, it seems.
Do you think someone like maybe ancient humanity to still give us the sort of man versus monster type of a dichotomy? Because the language does sound very almost not reverent, but just they're looking at them, you know, when you looked upon the rings, were you blinded by its majesty, kind of a dialogue that the prophets, you know, those types of, you know, the submarine isn't gonna have that type of dialogue thinking about the rings.
Yeah, that's what makes me think it is Covenant-esque.
Yeah, definitely it has that sort of vibe to it, so it's an interesting little poem. It's just something short and sweet. To me, I picture someone on High Charity in Halo 2 looking out the window, just contemplating life in the universe as they write this, and then getting turned into flood dinner.
Delicious.
Yummy.
I hope it's a grunt, like a deacon who's just has more time than most grunts have, that also just has quite the penmanship.
Now I'm picturing trying to read this in a very sort of well-spoken grunt accent. It could work.
We'll have to get Joseph Staten to do the audiobook for this one.
There's a plan. There's not too much more to say about these little poems. They're all fairly short and sweet. So we will move on to poem number 2. I believe this is David. It's Archeron-VII?
Yeah. Archeron-VII. It's barren here. The air chokes on dust and smoke. The ground cracks, surrendering to the heat. It's lonely here, with only the dead as company. But anymore, this has become his closest companion, death. There was once a purpose to all of this, a specific design. Soldiers sent forth in the name of retribution. In their path, an alien covenant, vast in number, ardent in their belief. Now, but one stands. Only one, survivor. His friends taken by conflict, their adversaries delivered unto. Alone now, he treks the wastelands, cut off, stranded, knowing somewhere above, out and beyond, his brothers and sisters continue to struggle, continue to fight, to die, to strive. A million stars between here and home, a million enemies more. Yet here he stands, ever vigilant, and here he'll stay, a lone warrior on a desolate plain. Okay, this poem I think is one of the more simpler ones. It just kind of describes a lone Spartan who was like the last survivor of like a battle, left on a planet. But it kind of made it sound like this person has been forgotten. They're pretty much just left behind, and that's kind of it, and they're just left on a desolate plain is kind of how it ends. A lone warrior on a desolate plain, and here he'll stay. It's kind of melancholic in the way it kind of goes of, obviously there was a big battle here against the Covenant specifically. It talks about how they're like vast in number, ardent in their belief, but now only one stands, one survivor. His friends taken by conflict, adversaries delivered unto alone. You know, it's interesting. It's nice and simple. It's very short. It's got like just that kind of Spartan, tragic, melancholic kind of end to it of like, he's not dead, but he is kind of alone on this, what's left. All his friends gone. He's just left there on a planet by himself.
I'm going to headcanon this and say that this is whatever mission George went on before they stuck him in Noble Team.
Oh, jeez.
No. Stop.
He's a sensitive soul.
To kind of build off what David was saying, was that this kind of, I think, shows a little bit more of the cost of being the best of the best of the best, that they were able to win this battle at literally all costs, except for this one individual. And although the Spartans are so efficient at what they do and they almost always come out on top, well, the result and the cost of all that is that this one Spartan's the last one, and yeah, he's kind of just forgotten and alone. That's the price that he has to pay to avenge his fellow comrades and what, like, the devastation of the Covenant's all affecting humanity. It's very sad.
Rip.
Next up, we've got Icon, written by Jonathan Goff, and who's leading us through that?
So I am. So yeah, Jonathan Goff again. I think he did most of these. And then the cover art is by Gabriel Garza, also known as Robo Gabo.
Huh?
I don't know, but here's the story. Soldiers forged from youth to serve as tools of war, weapons of direct and conclusive destruction. The men and women of the classified military project known as the Spartan II program will live on in legend following their exploits during the Human Covenant War, prepared for the harsh realities of combat against known enemies, but thrust into battle with the forces unimaginable and terrifying alien. The Spartan IIs and later the Spartan IIIs delivered numerous decisive victories against the overwhelming might of the Covenant. Altered to a level far beyond that of a normal human, the warriors of the Spartan II program were humanity's best, and possibly only, hope when faced with a threat of extinction from an advanced alien collective bent on our eradication, in the name of false prophecies and hidden agendas. Rising through the flames of war, echoing through the silent vacuum of space, word of the Spartans' deeds spread throughout the human colonies, offering salvation, offering a faint glimpse of ultimate victory. Thus came a demon, a hero, a soldier, a man, one Spartan above all others, equal but not for one defining factor, one immeasurable advantage. Like his brothers and sisters, he was trained to fight, to win, a master of the latest weapons of war. But Spartan 117, the Master Chief, had one tangible asset few others possessed: luck. Added to the unmatched drive to win, whether it be a simple game or a heated combat, Spartan 117's uncanny combination of finely honed skills and unprecedented good fortune made the ultimate warrior in a battle against all impossible odds. Never one to give in, never one to relent. The Master Chief and each of his fellow Spartans did more than engage the enemy. They delivered hope. With each burst of gunfire, with every battle won. So Icon's a little different. It's not exactly a poem. I think it's technically what's called prose, but I kind of get the sense that it's almost a little propaganda-y. It talks about who Spartan 2s and Spartan 3s are and kind of why they were commissioned and they were here to fight Covenant, and it's kind of the typical militaristic limelight we see them in. There isn't mention of insurrections that I was able to see. It just kind of really starts talking about the Human Covenant War and how this Spartan program came up and fought against, the invasion of Covenant, and then just talks on how they have continued to persist and overcome the flames of war and all these amazing feats that these Spartans have been able to overcome. And it talks about the Spartan threes as well and kind of what they've had. And then it takes a turn a little bit and focuses on one particular Spartan. We all know who he is, the Master Chief. I also kind of liked they talked about Demon in there, which is the moniker that the aliens sort of given the Master Chief, since he just obliterates everything. And so this sort of prose embraces that nickname and makes it heroic and full of duty, that John and the Master Chief are giving this fear to the Covenant. And so I think it's meant for civilians or some individuals to kind of read this type of a narrative to kind of get a sense on the battle that's going on in the stars and all that kind of stuff. And so it's very interesting. I think it's a good insight into sort of the other side of the Spartan program that kind of we don't see as a player or as a reader, but as a civilian.
I didn't think of it like that, as being like a piece of propaganda, but that's kind of what it sounds like when you hear it. It's cool.
All right, up next we've got Connectivity. It's another one by Jonathan Goff and cover art by Gabriel Garza, and I think Chris is going to take us through it.
All right. Theirs is a connection, deeper than circuitry, beyond that of man and machine. Deeper still, the electric flash of synapse. It is bound in destiny, fortified in trust. Deeper than blood, greater than love. Theirs is a union. The demon and the goddess, the warrior and the intellect. Built for destruction, created for war. To deliver peace through force and fire, against an enemy beyond the stars, advanced and devout, in their wake only glass, and the echoed screams of the dying. Threatened by oblivion, tested by the promise of eternity, yet they remain. These two as one, somewhere, out amongst the vast cold of the universe proper, they journey forth into the unknown. The princess of light and reason, the weapon of flesh and bone. So, this poem didn't age well. It's about the wonderful, beautiful connection that Chief and Cortana have, and how they are such a great team, and how they're so different but are able to work together and save the galaxy. And I think from Halo 4 onward has just kind of destroyed this poem horribly. I guess this is the poem that Chief and Cortana wrote together when their relationship was good, but now a breakup poem needs to be next. So I'm looking forward to the breakup poem. It's short, sweet. It was very nice if you're looking at the relationship between Chief and Cortana in Halo 1 through 3 and a little of 4 before, that ending. So I think it's still relevant. It's still nice. It's just very different. You look at it from a very different perspective now. And that's all I got.
I think it holds well up until Halo 4. Like, this poem was definitely written by Halo 4 Cortana. Halo 5 Cortana would not have done this.
No.
I feel like Halo 4 Cortana might have got it tattooed somewhere. Halo 5 Cortana's getting it sandblasted off her arm. Not too much more to say about that, really. Let's try not to think about the breakup too much, will we?
Yeah, it's a one and done.
So I think this takes us on to what may be the meat of this episode, because this particular one goes to places. So, this is the Ballad of Hamish Beamish. It is written by Frank O'Connor. It is clearly a cry for help. Talk about that in a minute. The cover art was done by Garrett Post. And let's have a little listen.
A long time ago, on a military ship, a boy signed on to a perilous trip. A would-be cadet with a penchant for danger, he signed on for thrills in a cryo-sleep manger. Corbulo's the name of his life's destination, a military school with a fine reputation. An officer's life was the life he had chosen, as he and his chums were cryonically frozen. and off into slipspace the young people headed. But a problem arose that starfarers have dreaded. The long sleep of storage was to be interrupted by a technical flaw and some code that corrupted. As the good ship Jamaica flew on through the night, the seal on his chamber grew a bit less than tight. The cryopod opened a decade too soon, and Hamish thawed out 'neath an alien moon. Alone and afraid in the space between spaces, he gazed with fear at his companions' faces. He wiped frost from their visors, but onward they slept, safe and preserved, while poor Hamish just wept. When he got it together, he resolved to survive. Alone on a starship, now surely he'd thrive. All he needed is some heat and a good source of food, but on waking the AI, the news wasn't good. Apologies Beamish, but the ship is unmanned. You and the others are effectively canned. We ship you like cargo to some distant star, but this uncrewed transporter has no buffet bar. Nor heating for humans, but there's plenty of air, so if you wrap up in blankets you might still make it there. Your sleep chamber's ruined, and the backup is rusted, so if you get to Corbulo, you'll be all old and busted. It's been called a flat circle and a relative hitch, but the fact of the matter's, time is gravity's bitch. So you have my condolence, and I'll help if I can, but I suggest that indolence is the best kind of plan. So the darkness and cold would make anyone spooked, and young Master Hamish knew that his goose was cooked. He examined his options and set in for the flight. He'd be cold and hungry for this long, lonely night. So he needed some fuel for a possible fire, and protein to eat lest his body expire. He looked high and low and through every dark passage, but all he could find was an Alberto sausage. 200 years old, discarded, incredible, but because it was jerky, it was still kind of edible. As he chewed the last meat that he might ever enjoy, he thought about girls and he thought about boys. Though frozen intact, nails and hair would still grow, and the seeds of his madness had started to show. He would shave them and clip them with tender composure, and burn hair and eat nails lest he die of exposure. The smell, it was dreadful, and the sight even worse, but better this madness than a flight in a hearse. And so 10 long years passed and Corbulo drew near, and Hamish's madness replaced all his fear. He got used to the routine, as we all want to do, but he dreamed of poutine, and he played his kazoo. Oh, I didn't explain that he kept that toy whistle, or that he wore a tattoo of a plain Scottish thistle. His buzzing lament did not keep him sane. In fact, you could argue it addled his brain. So when the ship at last reached the Corbulo banner, he was 30 years old and as mad as a spanner. The medics tried hard to habilitate Hamish. His exploits aboard were disturbing but famous. They found him a job doing what he does best, which is making the most of a terrible mess. So they put him in whites and they gave him a broom, and set him about cleaning room after room. The other cadets soon forgot Hamish's story, and Hamish got used to his mischance at glory. He'd never be a soldier or an officer to be, but he never got used to the odour of pee. He'd clean it in bathrooms from floor to the sink, but I never revealed what did poor Hamish drink. So here is the moral of this dreadful tale. Check all of your gaskets before you set sail. And if in your world you're aware that it's cleanish, remember the ballad of poor Hamish Beamish.
Alright, we have a little bit to talk about here.
Are you okay, Frank?
He needs a friend.
Yeah, this sounds like there was a great trauma. He needs a hug, which he can't have now because hugs are illegal.
I know he wrote this before quarantine, but...
To be fair, I think if anyone could survive quarantine, it's Hamish.
Yeah, I think Hamish.
He survived much worse. So, do we want to talk just briefly about who Hamish is? because some of you will know the photograph of Wild-Eyed Frank. Slightly terrifying looking.
He showed up briefly in Forward Unto Dawn, very, very briefly. It was supposed to be just a silly cameo, but then, of course, Frank O'Connor had to make it into a thing, and now it's a thing.
Yeah, it took on a life of its own. He is the janitor that cleans up the floor while the snot-nosed brats fight and throw dinner at each other. Do we think Frank survived? Do we think he was one
Definitely.
of the people rescued by Blue Team?
Oh, yeah, he's definitely out there.
I like to picture Hamish single-handedly taking on the Covenant battle with his mop.
That mop is a laser mop, I'm sure.
Yeah, so this story basically explains why Frank is a slightly demented-looking madman in Forward Unto Dawn, and once you read this poem, it makes a lot of sense. Like, what's the best short version here? Hamish came out of cryo early.
Well, he was going to the academy to be a cadet.
That's right.
And so he and all of his classmates, so to speak, were all cryotubed in sleep, but then he woke up like a decade early. He couldn't go back to sleep, and so he's just kind of walking around. And I think he talks with an AI.
There's an AI on this, yeah, but like, the AI sounds also terrible and not very useful, and pretty much just says, there is air on this ship, but that's pretty much it. There is no food. It is not built for this. So like, he had to survive off of his own urine and the protein he got from cleaning and cutting the nails and hair of the sleeping class students.
Gosh.
10 years of that, you get a not too altogether individual. The medical kind of techs, when he eventually gets to Corbulo, try to kind of rehabilitate him. So they pretty much just put him out to use in the only thing he's good at, which is cleaning. So that's pretty much the story of Hamish Beamish. But the poem is so sad and makes you just feel like so bad for like what is at the time a pretty fun little cameo of Frank O'Connor, who now if you look at it again you're just going to be like, oh Hamish, you poor bastard.
I'm so sad now.
The only thing this makes me wonder is why were they on such a slow boat out to Corbulo?
I did have that same thought. Like, 10 years is a long time. I guess I don't know enough about space travel to see if that, I don't know, maybe that's older technology, but that's not much older. That's that was maybe in the early 2500s.
That's very true, actually.
I don't know. The only thing is, if you'd have told me that the ship had broken down and that's why Hamish accidentally came out of cryo early and they were just sailing along on slow speed, maybe no one came to rescue them.
No, I got the impression of being that like it was just, well, yeah, I don't know.
I think it was just a faulty cryotube. I think it just said it had a leak.
It was something to do with a piece of code or something in it, but
He also has bad luck, like Soren.
A lot of bad luck characters.
I'd rather be Soren any day. Give me lifelong crippling pain than fingernail sandwiches.
Delicious. It's my favorite snack.
It's no wonder Hamish has such a wild stir. Yeah, I think just Frank needs a hug.
Yeah, I think he was. Next time you see Frank, please give him an unwarranted hug. Don't do that. Please don't.
He also just needs a good meal. Like, I think he just needs like a good steak sandwich or something.
If you're going to a convention, be sure to get like a little food gift card and give it to Frank. I think he'd really appreciate it. He's been living off of fingernails.
On that note, I think that will do us for today. If you see Frank and it's safe, hug him.
No, don't do that. Ask permission first.
yeah, that part.
Please ask permission before hugging people.
Or he'll beat you with his mop.
He's gonna like blacklist Podcast Evolved because we said
No
that.
rogue hugging.
Oh, we've been blacklisted before now.
I guess so, probably.
I'm sure it has. Alright guys, we appreciate it very much for joining us while we go through the poems of Halo. Thankfully that is all the poems of Halo. There will be no more fingernails mentioned through any of the rest of this.
Yay!
Tune in next week for another Halo Holiday Book Club. You can find links to everything we have over on the website, halopodcastevolved.com. You can go find the Discord server, Facebook group, and some of our other places. If you would like to leave us a voicemail about this episode or any others, not about fingernails, you can leave us a voicemail at 205-EVOLVED. That's 205-386-5833. And I have been your host, Aaron, and until next time, evolved.
Evolve.